trade professionals. We're back with another episode of the Simply Trade podcast. I'm here with Andy and Lalo, as always. Hi, guys.
Hello. Good morning.
My name's Annik, and I will be asking all the questions and introducing the articles for you today and maybe get into some conversation about it. We have some interesting articles, not so much specified on China. I think last week we were onto China because there was nothing else really reported that was of interest. And today we're a little bit more diversified, which I like because it just gives different perspectives of trade and maybe it hits an area that you would be interested in. Before, I want to mention that we do have a YouTube channel and you can watch lots of trade gems. So if you don't have time to listen to the 40-minute podcasts, well, this one is not a 40-minute podcast. Obviously, these are the news. You won't see the news on YouTube, but you can see trade gems. So there'll be like 10-minute long videos that you can, quickly watch and you'll get everything you need to know. It's like a workshop in 10 minutes. I mean, and you're not even paying for it. So check that out and let us know how you like it. And yeah, so let's begin into reading some articles. So first one is El Paso. So we're talking on the truck safety inspection at the border, which is resuming. And we had talked about that it was months ago that we talked on this. But they stopped the truck safety inspections at the border. And, we were like, okay, well, this is happening. And I guess they were very lenient. And now we're resuming back, which these inspections are conducted on all commercial vehicles arriving from Mexico, with the duration of enhanced inspections being unknown. The cargo truck wait times at the Isleta Zaragoza bridge have increased to over 8 hours compared to the usual 45 minutes or less. So there's definitely some concerns that could arise for different businesses and stuff. So let's jump into that. At first, I want to kind of talk on why they're doing this and what they saw that they needed to get these inspections back. And then how will this affect cross-border shipments to the United States, meaning whoever listens to this and, is waiting for a package, is this something that could extend their package wait for another day? Or so those are the two questions I kind of have for this article.
Yeah, it really is actually slowing down traffic a lot, and it's affecting the local economy. Of course, being here in El Paso, I have firsthand knowledge of that. But why are they doing this, you ask? But it's just a very interesting question because I know all the local news outlets and the news that I see here locally anyway, have reached out to Texas DPS, and none of them have commented on that. No, they have no comment on it, of course, and but if you look at the local news again, and look at the media, their take on it is that it is a way for Governor Abbott and, well, just politics. Let me just say that it's a way for the state of Texas to kind of, there's their own little protest, I guess. Let's call it that, right? Because of all the illegal immigration that's coming into the United States. And nobody is doing anything about it at the federal level. So the consensus or the thought process is that the state of Texas is now adding these inspections. Of course, when you go from less than an hour to 8 hours to cross your cargo, that is significantly lowering or slowing down your process of getting for your supply chain, so because of that, they're making a statement and of course making it more known that they want something done about the border crisis here and especially here in El Paso where we see trainloads of people coming in from the interior of Mexico and just camping out here on the border. So anyway, so that's what I hear, of course, being here locally, and I don't know if it's national or not, but anyway.
Their inspections, do they like inspect for drugs or people? I mean, because obviously there's a lot of like.
It's safety.
Yeah, officially it's safety, like Andy said. Officially, that's what the Department of Public Safety is. You know, they're doing it for safety reasons. But of course, if you find a person hidden in the cargo, or if you find drugs hidden in the cargo, then of course they're going to do something about it. However, well, you know, like
for tires,
Andy
for
knows,
brakes,
yeah, exactly.
I can tell you this, that there's a while back, I say a while back, this was part of the USMCA renegotiation, or like the NAFTA negotiations, because under NAFTA, there was a problem where initially trucking companies and independent truckers from Mexico were able to, in theory, be able to come across the border and, you know, penetrate into the U.S. market as far as transportation services. The problem was, and it happened very quickly, is that the maintenance on those trucks, I mean, there were bald tires, their brakes weren't working, there was smog problems and engine problems, whatever. So there was complaints filed with the Department of Transportation, or DOT, at the federal level. All that was going through, and things improved as time went on with the renegotiation of USMCA. There were some issues with the trucking. I'm not up to speed on that, but I know that there was some liberalization of allowing Mexican trucking companies to come into the U.S. border and offer some transportation services a little bit further in. That said, though, now you have the Texas Department of Transportation, or Department of Safety, whatever, doing this. And again, they're looking at it from, again, the tires, the brakes, the maintenance of the system itself, and all that. Under that, the other scenario here, though, is keep in mind that this flood from a political, now let's shift gears here a little bit. Texas is utilizing this to make a point, just like what Lalo was saying, is that Mexico has basically has stopped doing anything to prevent people from transiting their country and illegally trying to get into the U.S. And so guess what? Texas is utilizing this, and it's like, you know what? They may, with all the trucks backing up, maybe it's a staffing issue. Well, they've got, one inspector or two inspectors, and maybe they need 10, one of those deals. But, to try and I think this is more from trying to influence Mexico to say, look, step up and do something in your country to stop this mess. Because the vast majority of people coming across are not Mexican. They're from Central America, South America. They're from all over, countries from all over the world. Now, as far as the impact on the supply chain, yeah, it's going to it's adding a day into the cycle time. With an 8-hour shift, basically, or an 8-hour delay is the equivalent of one day. But by the time they finally get somewhere, to drop their load, you're adding one day into the process there. So
moving on to the car industry. So Volvo's entering the US market with a cost-effective Chinese EV amidst kind of a trade. I mean, I wouldn't say it is a trade war, I guess. But so this car, which is the EX30, is Chinese manufactured and is entering the market, the U.S. market, priced at $35,000, offering a price advantage if you look at other EV cars of approximately $8,000 compared to competitors like Tesla. Yeah, I'm sure Tesla's not happy about that one. So the move kind of is becoming a competitive threat, and I guess what we can talk on in this news article is first of all, what is going to happen? Like from here, what are they going to do? I mean, is this going to be something that will be addressed in some I'm not even sure what you do. You obviously don't sue them, but how is this going to be addressed? Are there going to be extra rules that are going to happen in this competitive landscape? Because I know that Tesla and other companies are not going to be very happy with that. So where do they go from here? I mean, they're obviously entering the market. So what can you do at that point if you are in another company?
I mean, I don't know if there's any action to take here, Annik. This is, by the way, folks, this particular article is in the U.S. News and World Report. It's a very good article, very short, but it's in looking at it, it is basically saying that Volvo is importing Chinese-made vehicles, the EX30. And it will be basically the 2025 models is what's going to hit. Now, with that, they're paying the duties. There are the China tariffs on these things. However, Volvo's also utilizing the duty drawback program because they are manufacturing in the U.S. It's a U.S. manufactured vehicle. It's a larger SUV in South Carolina, and it's being exported around. So what, and Lalo, I think you used the term when we were talking earlier off camera, substitution, I guess. So the Volvo is utilizing the duty drawback program to offset the additional duties paid on the EX30. What that means is they're apparently incorporating that duty refund, which is legal, by the way, folks. This is all legal. And they are offering a lower price. So it is a very competitive price for $35,000, apparently. It's a small SUV. And so basically that's what's happening. So just be aware that in the scenario, there are goods manufactured in China. They're being imported. Additional duties are on that. But at the same time, the same company is manufacturing in the U.S., and that product is exported and it's used as substitution to offset. So they get a duty refund on what was imported.
I guess in case anybody's wondering or what's going on here, which honestly, I'll be the first one to admit, up until we read this article, I had no clue that Volvo was owned by a Chinese company. So that's the reason why this is happening, actually. So it is owned by a Chinese company named Geely. But it has another Chinese name, but I can't pronounce it. But anyway, they go by Geely. And so that's why this is happening. And if y'all look at that Volvo, and if y'all remember, Ford used to own Volvo before this, I guess, this new, I always thought Ford owned them, up until yesterday or whenever I read this article, for one.
Owned them, and then I think somebody else bought them.
Oh, okay. Well, you see, I missed a step there somewhere. Somewhere in the history, I missed somewhere because I still thought Ford owned them. But if you look at that car, the EX30, it's almost identical to my Mustang, my Mach-E, my electric Mach-E. It's like they added a few little curves here and there. So I was wondering, maybe they took the designs when, they didn't steal them or anything. I mean, they were part of the same company. I'm sure they collaborated. But y'all look at that and it looks exactly like my Mustang. It's so similar. It's shockingly similar. But anyway, nice car. I mean, I'm not going to say anything about that, but yeah, so that's how the Chinese are getting around it. Like we did talk off camera about the duty drawback program, but that's exactly how they're getting through it, is by taking advantage of the substitution rule under the duty drawback.
Speaking of which, on the duty drawback program, folks, we're planning on having, I think we've done 2 shows on duty drawback, but one guy that we are wanting to have, we had recorded a show, and unfortunately there was too much background noise when we were at a conference. Tony Nagaris, is it? At Alliance. So we need to get him back on and go into a little bit more detail, because he had a very great way of explaining the advantages of duty drawback. So there's some things there that if you are exporting goods from the U.S. that you're manufacturing or importing, exporting, selling, whatever, it'd be worthwhile to check out. So Anyway, that's coming.
I also wanted to mention, okay, so I know China and I know the controversy with China. I understand. I'm going beyond that real quick. So this is obviously something that is benefiting not only, I mean, it is a Chinese company, but Sweden it's still independently owned, is what we talked about earlier. So they are making profits, and it's not operated. Oh, and operated. There you go. Thank you. They are making profits and stuff. And I feel like, and as a business owner, you always want to make the most profit, correct? You always try to find loopholes. And don't tell me, no, every business owner does that. And sometimes it can be malicious and sometimes it can't. Now, looking at this, what they're doing, I understand that it's much cheaper than some of the cars that are manufactured in the US, like is it manufactured in the US? I have to ask now that I'm making this correct.
It's all legal, and it's a good business model.
Okay.
I mean, it's
that's what I'm just
available
saying.
to them. I salute them for doing what they're doing.
That's why I'm saying. So they are having this progress and profit that they're making with this way around that they figure it out with China, blah, blah, blah. And don't you think this could also be kind of an example? I understand that China is going to become a big partner in this, if the way I'm thinking of this, but that this could influence future business strategies and expansion plans for other companies? I mean, specifically Volvo too, because they found this kind of loophole, but other companies.
Right. What to an extent, let me put it this way. To an extent, it's okay with me. Let me tell you why. Because there is a big, I was going to say it with an explicitive. I'm sorry. There's a big manufacturing operation in the United States producing even larger Volvo vehicles here in the United States that are employing a lot of people in the United States. So theoretically, looking at it that way, I mean, yeah, it's fair. And let me tell you, if there was tariffs or anything coming in from Germany or from Spain or whatever, the same way, I mean, this applies to them as much as it does China. So it's fair. Now, if they didn't have a manufacturing facility here in the United States producing some other kind of vehicle, then, and they still wanted the benefits or they still want to circumvent them, I mean, that's a different story. You know what I mean? But in this case, that's the way I am looking at it. I'm looking at it as that is somewhat fair, like I said, only because they are employing a whole boatload of people here in the U.S., and producing those other models of the Volvo. I mean, that's just my opinion, of course. I mean, I'm sure.
Yeah, and I honestly agree with you. I understand China's not in a good place, but I think there has to be some, not everything can be told as bad. Like we have to differentiate at some point. But also if we think on it, cars are getting very expensive, and the initiative of, keeping costs low at what cost? I understand, always thinking the other side, but people, they spend less and they have more money for other things that they can maybe spend in the economy. Some, Taylor Swift tickets, I don't know, something else. And I think that's a good thing, because cars are getting so expensive, and that, there needs to be some kind of initiative at some point. So that's just my thinking. I think it's interesting just to see how this will play out, and just, keeping an eye on it. And while we not bash China all the time, we just really critique their stuff. I feel like this is kind of a good thing, and it's a good thing for Volvo, obviously, because they're going to be banking. But yeah.
And I just did a quick look on this. There are 1,300 jobs at the South Carolina plant and in the U.S. So, I mean, again, to Lalo's point, I mean, this is a deal that creates an incentive. Yeah, these goods are being imported, but there's other goods being manufactured here and exported, and the company benefits. Part of the business plan. It's actually a wise move. So, again, folks, look at that, benchmark off of it, and if you got some questions, don't know who to go to, reach out to Lalo or myself, and we'll be more than happy to point you in the right direction.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that. Okay. Our last article is China. Oh my God. See, I have such a reflex of saying China because we're always talking about China. So here we go. No, Russia. Oh my goodness. Okay. So Russia is warning of potential seizure of private U.S. assets if the United States confiscates its frozen reserves. So there obviously has been recent tension between, the U.S. and Russia, and they have escalated. So following the passage of a bill in the U.S. House of Representatives, so that was the escalation, and this is, I'm not going to read this name. So there was suggested asymmetrical, oh my God, asymmetrical, oh my God, asymmetrical measure. So Dmitry Medvedev suggests oh my God, that's such a hard word for me. Asymmetrical measures such as targeting the assets of U.S. citizens and investors in Russia. Russia is super impulsive. I feel like they just have trouble with everyone at this point. But what legal? So the question I have here on paper is what legal and diplomatic implications would arise if Russia were to carry out the seizure of private U.S. assets within its borders? So what would the U.S. stance be at that point once they do that? Like, what would we do?
Well, on the international front, you're basically, if there are U.S. assets in Russia and they seize them, you're done. You're screwed. This is a retaliatory measure for the U.S. putting sanctions on several individuals and companies in Russia and against Russia itself. And secondarily to that, then the U.S. is looking at, they have frozen some currency exchange currency. And so the House passed a bill to seize, the U.S. government to seize those funds. And that's what Russia is coming back with, is say, you do that, we're going to seize whatever U.S. assets there are in Russia. So it's you do that, I'm going to do this. And it's expected. There's not much you're going to be able to do with this. This is saber rattling between the two countries. And if you're trying to do business with Russia right now from a U.S. perspective, you're up a proverbial creek.
Nothing much more from me to say. I mean, other than, what are you going to do? We talked about this last week on, gosh, I can't remember, Annik and Andy, maybe y'all can remind me, something about China. And we said what they're doing is not illegal. It's perfectly fine. There's nothing.
China put sanctions on some U.S. companies.
Right. That's what it was. That we're dealing with Taiwan. So they basically said, if you're working with Taiwan, then I'm going to sanction you. And again, there's nothing illegal about that. Same thing with this, with what Russia's doing. I mean, they're seizing your assets because they're in Russia, and I mean, it sucks, but I mean, it again, like Andy said, you're pretty much, I mean, you're out of that, So anyway, I don't have much more to say other than hopefully you can get that out of there quickly if you still have access to it. So but other than that, you got to count on it being gone. So write it off your books there.
Wow. Oh well. That's not a good note to end up on. Though maybe we can end on a very good note. Should I tell a story? Oh, I have a story. Well, it's not I wish I had a joke, but I do have a story, guys. I will be attending the Eras Tour next week, which is economy is about to go up in Europe. Let me tell you. The economy is going to be thriving in Europe because Taylor Swift will be heading to Europe starting on Thursday, which is very exciting. I mean, I'm so stoked. And I just did some logistics. I looked at logistics, and there's loads of articles on logistics on her. And when she was touring in the United States, I looked it up, and guess how many trucks she had to move her stuff around to her stage and whatnot. Like how many trucks?
20.
Like just guess.
20.
20?
Significant. I don't know.
You're saying 20? Okay. Yeah. Well, it's okay. Well, Lalo, just give me a number.
No, I agree with Andy. Yes.
You agree with, okay, well, it's 90. 90 trucks.
Holy
Lord have mercy, that's a show now.
So that would be it for today. I think I will stop talking about her now.
Yesterday was Cinco de Mayo, so
Was it
just say
yesterday?
something about Cinco de Mayo.
Oh, yeah, it is yesterday. I was like, isn't it on Monday? Guys, I totally forgot to tell you. Yesterday was Cinco de Mayo, and I hope you guys had a wonderful time. Had your little Dos Equis, or what's the Corona beer, and some
Modelo.
tacos, and
Modelo.
Modelo, and some
Modelo
tacos
is
and
the
Corona
most
is what the
popular
other one would be.
beer in America now.
Really? Huh. Interesting.
I love
okay,
Modelo.
well,
Yeah.
Yep.
It surpassed the Bud Light, but I mean, so
good, because Bud Light is, I mean,
Whatever.
that's water.
Bud Light is just
Water.
flaming still.
It's, I mean, I would be embarrassed to give
Anyway.
this to a German person. They would be, I don't know what they would do with the Bud Light. But yeah, so I hope you had a great time, and we will catch you next week on Monday. So yeah, bye.
Thank you very much for joining us. Simply Trade is brought to you by the generous contributions of Global Training Center. You can follow the show and GTC on LinkedIn or Twitter and other social networks. Make sure you check out the show notes in the description for a full rundown of today's show with all the important links. Also, make sure that you share this with a friend and subscribe on your favorite streaming platform. We really like hearing from you. If you enjoyed the show, make sure to rate and review wherever you listen to this podcast. If you or someone you know would like to be a guest in the show, or would like to sponsor Simply Trade, or suggest any topic you would like for us to discuss, please contact us via email at simplytrade@globaltrainingcenter.com, or you can DM us on Twitter at simplytradepod. Thank you again for the privilege of your time. Happy trading. Simply Trade is not a law firm or an advisor. The topics and discussions conducted by Simply Trade hosts and guests should not be considered and is not intended to substitute legal advice. You should seek appropriate counsel for your own situations. These conversations and information are directed towards listeners in the United States for informational, educational, and entertainment purposes only, and should not be substituted for legal advice. No listener or viewer of this podcast should act or refrain from acting on the basis of information on this podcast without first seeking legal advice from counsel. Information on this podcast may not be up to date depending on the time of publishing and the time of viewership. The content of this posting is provided as is. No representations are made that the content is error-free. The views expressed in or through this podcast are those of the individual speakers, not those of their respective employers or Global Training Center as a whole. All liability with respect to actions taken or not taken based on the contents of this podcast are hereby expressly disclaimed.